territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III.
Hello, Mack Pack. It's great to be back with you. Thanks for joining us for another episode of On the Move. This is the show that attempts to inspire you to stand up for your rights, and I am Mack Worley, your host, and we'll be going on a journey today. Today's going to be quite a different show than we're used to. I want to talk about something that I've been planning for quite a while, and it's kind of serendipitous how things work out, and I'm really excited that today is the day that I get to do this show. I've been planning this for quite a while, and like I said, today's March 15th. It's actually just so happens to be my birthday, and being that it's my birthday, I happen to actually really enjoy the history surrounding this day. It's kind of a crazy day in history when you think about it. We've all heard "Beware the Ides of March," and some of you may not know the history surrounding it. I can tell you after today you will. We're going to talk about it. It's actually the day that Julius Caesar was assassinated. This is I guess technically he's the first dictator of Rome after it was a republic, and then it became a dictatorship under him, and that beckoned forth the new empire that was going to be the Roman Empire. His descendants ultimately became emperors, and they had a whole lot of influence in shaping that nation. So I want to talk about this because a lot of what we deal with, we talk about tyranny and government and obviously gun rights and individual rights and things like that. A lot of these concepts first came about from the Romans and the Greeks, and I think it's important that we actually understand these things and we talk about it. So, I've been hoping that one day, someday, somehow, there would be a time when I could actually talk to you guys about this on this day, and it's pretty exciting. It finally came. I finally got the opportunity to have you guys, on this day. I think it's really important, and it's a special day to me. Obviously, it's my favorite day because it's my birthday. But yeah, it's really important to me. So I wanted to share this with you guys, and this is a show, like I said, I've been planning for quite a while. Today's show is titled, of course, "Beware the Ides of March," and we're really excited about it today. So anyway, without further ado, I just kind of want to get into this stuff here. And, this is really going to be the show. We're going to talk about some news after, we talk about the assassination of Caesar and kind of the roots of the Roman Empire. And I hope you guys enjoy this kind of stuff today. By the way, if you have anything that you would like to comment, feel free to join us, in the conversation. The number to the show is 360-450-5625, or you can email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. If you have anything you'd like to discuss, we'll be taking calls in the Mack Attack segment once we actually, get out of the history portion of the show. So, anyway, again, that number is 360-450-5625. So. And let's get all the housekeeping stuff out of the way first before we get into all of this. If you don't know by now, my name is Mack. I'm Mack Worley. I'm your host of On the Move. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. If you're new to the program, we talk about all things liberty, guns, government, history, things along those lines. You can check us out at OnTheMoveShow.com. That's our main hub. You can follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Like us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow. And follow us on Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. Whew. Okay, now that that's done, let's get to it, guys. So first of all, we're going to talk about the history, and then I want to make some parallels about how Rome, and I'll do this along the way, how Rome and our country are very similar. And there are some similarities in the past we take. We have our major differences, obviously. We are a totally different country, but the Roman Empire has a lot of imperialistic qualities that we actually do have as well. So, but and I'm not trying to demonize them or us. I'm just stating some facts, and we'll go along and we'll talk about it. But anyway, let's start here. First things first. Rome, obviously in Italy. it was first created, there was it originally had kings. So, and by the way, all this information is compiled through a series of documentaries I've watched, books I've read. I enjoy this topic, so I've taken a lot of time to actually get a lot of different sources, and some of this is my opinion. Some of this I'm quoting other people or paraphrasing their words. So just keep that in mind. But anyway, Rome, it was established, and it was established with Romulus and Remus. This is a legend. Romulus and Remus are these two babies, and they were taken in by this she-wolf. The legend says, anyway. The she-wolf raises them in a cave, and this cave actually goes on to be like a holy spot for the Romans, and they worship at this cave. But anyway, Romulus ends up killing Remus and establishes the city of Rome. And Rome, obviously taking his name, Romulus, Rome, it grows and grows and grows, and eventually they overthrow their kings and they become a republic. And this Roman Republic, it had lived for about 450 years after the expulsion of their kings, and they had essentially what was a kind of mafioso aristocracy, essentially, is what it is. So it's all of these people, really important peoples, famous families. They have a lot of influence. They have a lot of political clout, a lot of power. They're all colluding, backroom deals, and essentially the government is run through a series of backroom deals. And this government actually worked very well underneath the Republic. I mean, obviously there was a lot of corruption, and it wasn't the kind of republic that we may think, but it did have the people had a will, the ability to move the government. What this form of government actually did was it gave incentives to great men to essentially do great things, to do great deeds. So you can become more famous. If you do this stuff, if you're more famous, you can have more power. You can have more political clout. These things were important in the Roman community. But there was these, just like in mafia families as well, there were rules. It wasn't lawlessness. They did have rules within the mafia. The power was supposed to be basically centrally divided between these families, and they all kind of took a stake of it, and nobody was supposed to get too powerful. Nobody was supposed to threaten that dynamic that they had. And if they did, they'd be taken outside. They'd be swimming with the fishes, so to speak, like very much like the mafia. So that was kind of the entire idea. And, obviously individuals who had ambition would try to get more power, but there was essentially, for the most part, even with the most powerful of them all, before Caesar, there was a balance that was struck. And anyway, we know a lot about Caesar, and by the way, for those of you who don't know, his name is Julius Caesar. He was a very, very famous general, but before that, he did have quite a bit of stuff that happened to him. He's famous, extremely famous, for writing his account when he conquered Gaul, which is essentially modern-day France, and we're going to get into the invasion of Gaul in a moment here. But he fought more battles than any other Roman general in history, and this success, it put a target on his back, because he started to become loved by the people, and this was intentional, and we'll get to that too. So other families started to take Julius Caesar as a threat. And Julius Caesar, he was an excellent general. He's very brilliant strategist. I can't speak. He was a great orator. He had a good family name. He knew how to use his orating ability to actually influence the people, and he started to realize that rather than catering more to these famous families with famous names and trying to play the backroom deals to make power, he realized that the power was really with the people. If he could convince the people to give him power, then that was all he needed. It didn't matter what these families needed. So he started to cater towards that. And anyway, he went on to pay for games. You guys have all heard of the Roman games, the gladiator games. Well, he went on to actually pay for quite a bit of these games, and he was spending a fortune on this. And he looked at it as an investment in his future. People knew who he was. Everybody that was there witnessing this game was there in turn because of him, and they owed him a debt of gratitude. So, and that was kind of the way that the culture worked. It was had a sense of honor to it. If somebody did something for you, you owed them. So anyway, he did this. He was paying for these kind of games a lot, these gladiator games, and the Senate actually rushed through some legislation in order to limit the amount of money that people could spend on gladiators. Doesn't that sound very familiar? We talk about money in politics now, and there's this whole Citizens United situation that we talk about in modern day context, getting money out of politics, even though the left, they're the ones that are screaming this, get money out of politics, and obviously some libertarians as well are screaming that as well. But for example, we talk about the political organizations of the left. They have George Soros and Bloomberg and all these cajillionaires who are funding these organizations. So, it seems a little bit hypocritical, the pot calling the kettle black, so to speak. But anyway, even back then in ancient Rome, they had these issues. So the Senate, they rushed through the legislation to actually limit how much money could be spent on gladiators. And let's see here. The next step here for Julius Caesar, he actually went after a public office. He wanted to actually increase his appeal and have more people know who he is, his influence and his power. So what he did, he went after the office of Pontifex Maximus, I believe is how you pronounce that. And anyway, what this is this essentially it's the head priest. It's of the Temple of Vesta, and these. What the Temple of Vesta does is they guard the sacred flame, and these Vestal virgins are the ones that are guarding the sacred flame, and their entire job is to keep this flame burning, and the flame is the legend surrounds it is that it protects Rome. As long as the flame is burning, it will protect Rome, so they keep it alive, and anyway, this is a pretty politically valuable spot, position for Caesar, and he saw it as such because, number one, it's a position which you hold for life, and then additionally, it's a position that's only elected by the people. So the people of Rome were the ones who were responsible for doing that, and It also has a very big prestige around it, and additionally, his home, I believe he was living in the center of Rome, so, he was literally at the political and actual geographical center of Rome, living in this temple. So, anyway, and he's the head of the state religion. That's what that position is. It's the head of the state religion, so everybody knows you, everybody knows about it. And So Caesar, he took out all this money. Caesar didn't have a lot of money to begin with. He had a very important family name, but he didn't have, a whole lot of money to back it up. So he took out all this debt, and he tried to buy his vote. He was spending so much money to get citizens to vote for him. And, he told his mother that he's going to come back a victor, or he won't come back at all, because he has all this debt. He wouldn't be able to afford to pay him back afterwards if he didn't get this position. So he would had to flee. He wouldn't have been able to do anything at that point. He would have gone into hiding, avoiding his debts. But luckily for him, he won. So anyway, he did this, and during this process, he kind of stopped playing by the rules of the aristocracy. He could be seen stepping on these people's toes, and it was something that they had a major issue with. He's changing the rules of the game, and they didn't like it. So then, it started making these families nervous. But then he goes on to plan to run for consul, which this is one of the most senior offices in Rome. It actually is the most senior office in Rome. So Caesar tries to run for consul as he's got this, he's the head of the state religion, and now he's trying to expand to become, something more, an actual politician here instead of a state religious figure. And so what he did, he realized he needed two things. He needs money, and he needs the backing of the military, a strong military force behind him. So he cozies up to this gentleman named Crassus, and Crassus is actually the richest man in Rome. He has more money than, and this is a rich city to begin with. So you're talking about the richest city in the world at the time, and this is the richest man in the richest city in the world. He's so rich that he's actually quoted as saying that you're not rich unless you can afford to fund your own army. And he could do that. He funded his own army. Anyway, in addition to the money that Crassus brought to the table, he partnered with Gnaeus Pompeius Magnus, and you all may know of who he is as the Great Pompey. He's Pompey. He's a extremely successful and popular general in Roman history. He's extremely successful. There's monuments built to him. His power in Rome. He's got the theater of Pompey. He's got statues. So much stuff that's dedicated to Pompey. So he was extremely influential as well, and they partnered with Julius Caesar, and it was kind of a tenuous deal. They each wanted something out of it. Crassus, he wanted laws passed in favor for business that he was conducting in the East. So that's what Crassus got out of it. Pompey, he wanted he wanted land and rewards for his soldiers. He basically kicking back to his army, getting their loyalty. And this was a big deal, loyalty back then. If you were a general in an army, you wanted to win the loyalty of your troops. You wanted to win the loyalty of your troops more so than what they were fighting for as the Republic. They were then fighting for you. That was kind of the goal of what these generals were looking for back then. So anyway, the deal was made. Caesar, he actually made out in his deal, he reserved a province in northern Italy, and this province was bordering Gaul, which again is modern-day France. And he wanted this province all for himself, and he got it. And this province actually allowed him to obtain military glory, and we're going to get to that in a moment here, talking about the conquest of Gaul. So he serves, Julius Caesar, he serves for 1 year, as consul, and then he goes on to his province to govern it. And he's hanging out, govern its province, and then decides to invade Gaul. And what you need to know about invading, Roman invasions, so to speak, many of these were seen as essentially liberating. This may be a good parallel here to what we have done in the past, although when they liberate, they conquered at the same time. So what they would do is they would say, oh, there's so much bloodshed happening in Gaul. There's all this tribal warfare going on between all of these Gallic tribes, basically, and they're fighting amongst each other, lots of violence going on. And one tribe or something would come to them and say, hey, we need your help. If you help us, we'll support you, and we'll back you up. So this is the kind of stuff that happens, and this happens in many of the fights that they're involved in. And it's a way, basically, of selling the war to the people of Rome, and saying, hey, we're not the bad guys, we're the good guys here, we're liberating. And then when they come in and they liberate, they install the friendly tribes or whoever's technically brought them there, the good guys, I'm using air quotes here, they install them as governors and they run the province themselves. So it's Roman territory, but it's run by these foreigners. Does that make sense? All right. So moving forward here, Rome decides to invade Gaul, and they call the Gauls and these everybody basically north of Italy, they called them barbarians, which just so you know, as far as Roman terminology, is actually just means other. It just means other people who aren't us. But it's been it's kind of been stigmatized, or I guess iconicized with everybody can imagine like the Gallic warriors with the body paint and running with axes and things like that. That's what we think of when we think of barbarians. But really, it just meant other. But it ended up, they dealt a lot with everybody to the north of them, and that's kind of where it got that idea from. So anyway, he goes there. He starts to invade Gaul. He has an amazing, as far as for his reputation and his legacy, an amazing invasion of Gaul. He defeats 300 tribes, destroys 800 cities, and kills 1 million people in the process. Now, I mean, obviously all of this is terrible, but as far as his reputation, he gains a considerable amount of reputation. His biggest concern, really, militarily, was Pompey and his reputation surrounding him. He's such a successful general. He had the loyalty of his men. He had all of this clout. And excuse me. And anyway, now he is really rivaling the power of Pompey. And he was obviously a military genius. And we're going to talk. I want to talk about the Battle of Alesia a little bit here, which it's amazing. This has got to be one of the most interesting battles, the biggest battle, and definitely one of the most successful battles that Caesar has fought. So what was happening in Gaul? All of these tribes, they were warring against each other, but then when the Romans came in, they realized the threat. They realized that they were not going to be able to defeat the Romans alone. So they all unified, and they did underneath the leadership of one man, and this man's name was Vercingetorix. And this is a really interesting story. So Caesar was actually losing. He was getting his butt kicked, and he was being chased around by a large unified tribal army underneath Vercingetorix's command. And there was this one point where cavalry was chasing Caesar, and his men all basically turned around and started to advance, and they won this minor skirmish, and it ultimately led to them basically using this to their advantage, this momentum that they created, to push the entire army back to the city of Alesia, which is, it's on this huge hill. It's this fortress. They couldn't get in. They couldn't really assault it. So Caesar did what Romans do best, and he built. And what they did is astounding. I mean, this has got to be the biggest military feat of the time. Amazing. They immediately started setting up earthworks and began a siege. And siege tactics are basically, hey, we'll starve you out. We'll wait until you run out of your resources. Why let us have a single one of our men die in the process? When you can just open up the doors voluntarily. We got nothing but time. So that's what they did. And in the process, they start building earthworks. They built a wall around the city, miles around this big city in this hill. The wall was 12 feet high at least, and it had 2 different trenches, going like before the city wall got to before you got down the hill to the wall, you had to go through these 2 trenches. Each trench was 15 feet high, 15 feet deep. Unbelievable. And they had man traps, all sorts of different stuff. One of these things I was actually reading a while back ago, they had these, I don't really know what they're called, but they kind of look like jacks. You guys ever played that game as a kid? That you got the ball and the jacks, and they're these little spiky things with the soft tips on the end. Well, they look like that, except they didn't have soft tips. And what they did is they built these big ones, and they were very sharp, and they were probably 4 or 5 inches wide, square around, and they would scatter these on the ground outside of the wall. That way, if any kind of cavalry or men were running up there, they would step on these sharp points that were sticking up, and it would penetrate their foot or the horse's hoof, and it became a big force multiplier. I've talked about these before in the past when we had an episode and we were talking about force multipliers. These are different things that you can do from a strategic standpoint that can actually add to your manpower. It is a force multiplier because it limits how quickly people can approach you. It gives you a lot of advantages for that, and obviously you can take down an enemy. And as we've discussed, also as far as like Vietnam and whatnot, those kind of guerrilla warfare situations, the Viet Cong, they would rather hurt an enemy, injure somebody than kill somebody, because if you injured somebody, you took him out of the fight, but additionally maybe one or two other people to take care of that guy out of the fight as well. So it's beneficial to, in a sense of war, a total war kind of environment, you want to inflict damage on your opponent rather than to kill them, because that damage will degrade their efficacy in the fight anyway. So that was kind of the concept. So anyway, now he's completely surrounded the city, and what has happened, Vercingetorix has actually managed to send some messengers out and say, hey guys, we're trapped in here. We need some help. We need some backup. So the tribes mobilize, and during this process, Julius Caesar's 15,000 men, they're building this wall and these earthworks and all of this stuff. It takes them 3 weeks to do this. 15,000 men. And Vercingetorix sent for the help. Now, again, all of these accounts are from Caesar himself. He made sure to, if there was any other accounts of the event, he made sure to get rid of them. The only words that we have about it from people who were there are Caesar himself. So it's difficult to really substantiate the accuracy of this. But Caesar claims that the opposing army that came to help Vercingetorix, that army consisted of approximately 250,000 men. So we're talking about 250,000 men versus 15,000 men, and this is kind of it's something it's difficult for me to believe. But according to statistics, it was at least a 5-to-1 advantage against Julius Caesar's men in Rome. So Caesar, he realized that this other army was coming. He got some information about it, and what he decided to do was face a second line of fortifications facing the other way. So now they're on this wall, and they've got fortifications on both sides of them. They're expecting to be attacked on both sides of them at some point here, and this is what is actually called death ground. There's nowhere to run. This is a terminology that Sun Tzu, he's the guy who wrote The Art of War. He's I think that's his name if I remember correctly. But yeah, I read his book a really long time ago. But this is called death ground, and it's really interesting because when you put your men in a situation where they have no, at least this is the concept by the guy who wrote the book. When you put them on death ground and they have nowhere to run, you give them no option of running. And that's a big thing in warfare, especially in this kind of warfare, is when the men's will break, people start running. When people start seeing their own team start running, everybody starts running, and then your entire army is en route. Where you could possibly have won if they continued fighting, people start running. So death ground is good for those situations. You can prevent your men in a command situation from running. Sun Tzu did this. There was a moment where he was being chased from, I can't remember the name of the enemy that he was being chased, but it was a bigger army, and Sun Tzu put his men basically with their backs at the ocean, or maybe it was a cliff of some kind, and they had nowhere to run. And this bigger army ended up breaking because not only did Sun Tzu's men have nowhere to go, but they were there to fight to the last man. He also gave them an avenue of escape. He made sure that they could get out if they started running. He didn't want to put his opponents on death ground. And anyway, actually, before we continue on in this history of Rome, let me just give you another quick story, an interesting story about Sun Tzu. I don't know if this is legend, this could be myth, it could be true. But when he was brought on by a king to make opposition to the enemies of that king, I really should have brushed up on this a little more before I told the story, but I'll just give you the vague points here. He was brought on, and the king had basically his doubts that Sun Tzu could fulfill his promises, that he could teach his men how to be excellent soldiers and what he could do. So the the king said, well, could you teach these housemaidens here, these geishas essentially is what they were, how to be soldiers? And Sun Tzu says, yeah, of course I could do that. No problem. Obviously. And so he actually undertakes that as a deal. And these are undisciplined women, they're just sitting around, they're not soldiers. So he's trying to teach them moves with the sword play. He's like choreographed moves that they're supposed to do, and he sits there and he teaches them these moves and he shows them, and he says, okay, now who are the most senior people here? Who's been here the longest? He finds the top 2 senior women, the women who have been there the longest, and he says, all right, you are in charge. I want you to teach them these moves. I taught you how to do it. Now teach them these moves. And then they just giggle, and he says, okay, well, maybe I've done something wrong here. Maybe I haven't explained this properly to you. So I'm going to do this again one more time here. I'm going to teach you the moves, and then you're going to teach the other girls how to do this. And then he teaches them the moves again, and he says, now it's your turn to teach the girls, and they just giggle. So Sun Tzu chops one of the girls' heads off, and now the other girl is in charge. And he says, now it's your turn to teach them. She teaches them how to do it, and they excel. They become, pretty tough women. They're pretty good at sword play and things like that. So he wins in his victory. In this situation. And the lesson that the book points out is that if instructions are not followed, it's the fault of the general for not explaining it properly. However, if the general explains things properly, and then the instructions aren't enforced, and you are sure that your instructions were clear and concise, and you've even reinterpreted those instructions, then it's the fault of the subordinate, and they must be punished. So that's that story. It's kind of a weird story, but it's interesting. I really like that story because I kind of, when I was in the military, I read this book, and I liked it because it made it so that I was very clear and concise using this principle in my instructions, and I made sure what the expectations were to my subordinates. I made sure that they knew what was expected of them, and that was important to me. And I never had to chop any heads off, so that was a good thing. So anyway, back to Rome. Why not, right? Okay, so anyway, he's built up earthworks on both sides of him now. Julius Caesar. He's expecting to be attacked by both sides of this united tribal army, 250,000 men approximately. And I don't know if that's accurate or not, but that's according to his accounts. According to other accounts, he was outnumbered 5-1. And he's in a victory or death scenario. He's going to die. Everybody is going to die if they do not fight to the last man, and they know this. The siege lasts 2 months. Caesar actually eventually won and defeated Vercingetorix. Thousands died. It marks the end of the conquest of Gaul. Caesar has, in one fell swoop, he has increased the size of the Roman Empire by almost 1/3. Slavery, plunder, taxation, all of these things are great for Caesar. Additionally, he gains fame, and it's enough to rival that of Pompey's. It makes him richer than Crassus ever was, and a huge point here that has to be pointed out is he gained the loyalty of his men. His men at this point fought for him, not for Rome. They fought for the glory of Caesar, not for the glory of the Republic. So this is a very important point here to mark, because this creates conflict within the aristocracy. Again, remember back at the beginning, we were talking about there's this careful balance in these mafia-like families where the power was divided. You played by the rules. If you tried to gain too much power, you became a threat to everyone else, and they treated you as such. And we're talking about a community that may have, they could just kill you if you stepped out of line. So violence was just another political tool of these people. So it's interesting. And anyway, at this point, we're going to go ahead and cut to a quick commercial break. When we get back, I want to talk more about the power struggle that's about to ensue, some Civil War stuff that's about to happen. It's going to be exciting. You don't want to miss this, guys. This is going to be fun. Don't go anywhere. We'll be back in a minute.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic designing services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Hey, Mac Pack, we're back. It's another exciting episode of On the Move with Mack Worley. Of course, that's me. So, when we last left, we were talking about Rome, Roman history, Julius Caesar, and we've basically gotten up to the point of his conquering of Gaul, which is modern-day France. And he has basically shaken the stability of this mafia-like family situation where, all of these families, they have their power and they're all supposed to follow the rules, play by the rules. Nobody's supposed to take too much power. No one's supposed to get too ambitious. And yet Caesar is doing just that. Now he's richer than the richest in Rome. He has the loyalty of a very, very strong army. This army is not only strong, but it is battle hardened through campaigns of war in Gaul. And obviously, the military genius surrounding Julius Caesar plays to his advantage. And additionally, he has the love of the people. The people there just think he's the best thing ever, and he placates to them. He does things for them. He hosts games in their honor, and they go to this. And again, this is a society of honor. So when you do something for somebody in this kind of society, you owe them, whether or not you want to or not, and you may owe them disgruntledly, but you owe them. So that was the situation that we have, and this creates an enormous power struggle going on right now between the two strongest men in Rome. And just so you know, at this point, the deal that Julius Caesar made when he struck a deal with Crassus and Pompey to get the consulship, and they each got a little something out of it. Obviously, Caesar got the best part of it, and it helped his name, his fame. He got more land, and from that land, he used it as a springboard to launch his attack into Gaul. Well, Crassus is dead now. Crassus had died, and Caesar and Pompey, they eventually divided the power. The government's run by these two men. It's basically a shadow government of sorts. These two men are in control of the republic. The fate of, I believe, 50 million people or so are in the hands of these two men. And both of these men have egos, the size of an elephant. There's no way that this can last for long. This kind of alliance, this kind of relationship, No way it can last for long. So, and in fact, it doesn't. Pompey, he actually has the first strike. And this is in 52 BC. He uses the Senate to actually relieve Caesar of his command and demand that he returns home. And this is something that Caesar can't do. Number one, it's a matter of honor. You know, he can't do it. It would dishonor him to do that. But number two, if he just leaves his armies there, there's no guarantee that, again, the political tool that is there in the society of violence, there's no guarantee that Pompey just won't see him as a threat and kill him. So basically, if he gives up his army, he's potentially going to die. And, you know, if he doesn't, he's potentially going to die. So he's left with no choice. He basically has no choice at this point as a matter of honor. And he decides to keep his army. And not only that, but he brings his army into Italy and across the Rhine River, which this was forbidden. No generals were allowed to ever cross the Rhine with their army. And it was actually seen as an act of war itself for any general to do. This act started the civil war that took place, and this was basically between Pompey and Caesar and some of the other families that had a lot of distrust about Caesar, and they wanted to prevent him from getting involved. Some of those families were the Brutii, which I believe Brutus was a part of, and other very recognizable names in the Roman community. Well, anyway, the war goes on. They're battling the civil war. It's raging across the known world at this time. There was let me see here. They're battling in Italy, obviously in France. They battled in Spain, Greece, Egypt, Tunisia. All these are modern day equivalents. These were different back then. Obviously, they were under Roman influence at one point or another. So a lot of names have changed, but these are the areas that they fought now. And So what happens? Pompey's starting to lose. He's starting to lose the war, and Caesar is basically hunting him down. Now you also have to imagine this is a weird, conflicted. A lot of the portrayals of Caesar show this, especially if you watch the movie or show. I think it's Rome. I believe that's the name of it. I watched it once. Caesar looked at these people as political enemies, but also friends. So people that he once grew up with, and he's had relationships with and friendships with, he still recognized them as friends. So he didn't want to, according to the portrayals of him. Again, this could be wrong, because the only accounts that we have is by Caesar's diary himself, and we know how he liked to placate to people. So maybe he's painting himself out to be, a good guy. Obviously, most of us, if you're writing a journal about yourself, you may be making yourself out to be a good guy, or at least tell only your side of the story. So who knows? But a lot of the way he's portrayed is that he didn't necessarily want to kill Pompey, but Pompey, he starts losing. He tries to seek asylum in Egypt with the Pharaoh in Alexandria, and when he gets there, he's murdered. And they send the head of Pompey to Julius Caesar, and he's upset by this. He didn't want him to be killed. He wanted him, according to his accounts, to still be alive and just to surrender. And he'd keep him alive essentially. He wasn't going to murder Pompey, but somebody did it. It ended the war. It ended the civil war, and Caesar returned home now without any opposition. This is in 49 BC. He'd been gone for 4 years, and now he leaves promises to the people, the citizens of Rome. He promises peace and stability in the region. Because of this, they award him with every honor that they legally can. They even award him the title of dictator, which is normally reserved for emergencies, but they still awarded him this. This is the highest possible honor that they could do. And from here, the seeds of dissent start to grow. And a lot of this really had to do with the way that Caesar handled this. His men... the opposition, the people who opposed him, his political opponents, he actually pardoned. He pardoned, and he let them live. And this opposition, first of all, they were kind of resentful that they owed him. Again, this is a society of honor, so they were resentful that they owed him, and he took their power by making them have to stay. They didn't have to stay, but they chose to, and they were upset that they had no choice but to submit to him. This really made them resent his pardon in the first place. So, so from here, an assassination plot starts to begin, and it's really small at first. They start talking, dissenting, and the aristocracy, they start to conspire together. And I want to talk a little bit about the history of like the Roman mindset here. When you start really laying it down and understanding it, because this aristocracy, they believed that people didn't want a dictator, that they didn't want to have one man having all this power. But you have to understand that the roots, as we talked about earlier, of the Roman people, they were started as a kingdom under Romulus, and they have actually the idea of one strong man leading the country into like greatness. This concept is very appealing to many of those Romans at the time. They have a strong history of kings, as I said, and like I said, even the city of Rome carries the name of Romulus. So this idea isn't foreign to them. It's something that they can wrap their mind around. And with the fact that how much they really liked him, Caesar, and all the stuff he did for the people, how great he's been for Rome and Italy. He expanded the empire almost 1/3. Unbelievable amount of stuff that this guy did, and he was incredibly popular with the people. So the conspiracy really took for granted that sentiment from the people. But anyway, moving forward here, Caesar wasn't necessarily just happy with living as the dictator. He wanted more. He wanted to be an emperor. He wanted, total control and undisputed power. So what he did is he used the festival of Lupercalia. I believe I'm saying that right, Lupercalia. And it's a festival dedicated to the mother, the she-wolf, Lupa. That's that wolf that raised Romulus and Remus. So the mother, she's raising Caesar, and anyway, all the mythology behind this. The mother there, essentially, she starts to get this festival there. Man, I'm sorry, I'm losing track. I got like 5 other windows popping up on me in one time here. All right, let's start over. This festival to Lupercalia, or Lupercalia. There we go, Lupercalia. It's in honor of this the she-wolf. So what happens during this festival is Caesar uses it as an opportunity to basically crown himself king. He wants to be king, and he's trying to basically feel it out. So what he does is he uses his most trusted general, Mark Antony, and they put a crown on Caesar's head. Mark Antony puts a crown on his head, and he does this in front of the crowd, the entire crowd, out at this festival. And the crowd boos and starts to, they get real silent at first. The first time he tries to do it, he actually does it twice. So the first time they try to do it, the crowd gets real silent and there's murmurs. And, Caesar doesn't like how they reacted, so he pushes it away. He says, "Get that crown away from me." And the crowd cheers and they go crazy and they're like, "Woo! Caesar doesn't want to have, total control. He's one of those like we have here in America, the reluctant politicians, He's reluctant about power. He doesn't want that kind of power." But then Mark Antony tries it again, and he puts it on his head again, and the crowd starts to boo and, get upset. So he pushes it away again. Caesar pushes the crown away again. And the crowd goes crazy, and now they freaking love Caesar. They love him. They see him as this guy, and he used this as an opportunity. It was win-win for him. He either won, he would get the crowd support, and he would become the emperor of Rome. If they would have bid, he would have been the emperor of Rome right there. They unfortunately didn't, and so he used this as like an act of humility. He basically showed the people of Rome, "Hey, I'm not power hungry. If I wanted power, I could have taken it, but I don't want it. I'm just, I'm a man of the people, right?" So, so that's what this whole event is his displaying this and trying to use this to his advantage, and it was win-win for him. But this act, this whole display sends the conspirators forward here. They know that there's no way, this aristocracy, they said, we're losing control here. He's become too big of a problem. We need to take him out. We have to kill Caesar. So, and these these conspirators, they actually are referring to themselves as liberators. They think that that Caesar is usurping power, and they're trying to restore the republic in their eyes, and they think that they'll have the vast support of the populace. And this is led by Brutus, which is an old friend of Caesar, but then turned political rival, and he was actually part of the Civil War opposition. As I mentioned before, like I said, he was one of the people that were pardoned from Caesar. And again, the way it was looked at in that society is that pardoning your enemies basically robs them of their political power and their honor, and they resent this. So anyway, Caesar, he was right about to plan, he was actually right about to leave with his army to go fight a campaign abroad. And this plan would have kept him there for approximately 3 years. So he was going to be gone. And it really forced the conspirators to have to expedite their plot, their assassination plot to kill Julius Caesar. And they had to plan it on the next day that the Senate would be in session, which was March 15th. That's today, by the way, March 15th. And Caesar was warned. He was warned several times. A lot of people kept telling him, beware the Ides of March, and he just didn't listen. He ignored all the warnings that he was given. He believed that his enemies were not brave enough to or strong enough to actually strike against him. In addition, he had a very big ego. So it's not going out on a limb to say that this man thought that he was too powerful to be attacked or threatened. He thought that there was no way that anything could happen to him. In fact, when he was traveling through Rome, he did so without a bodyguard. The only person that was with him was his general, Mark Antony. And so the conspirators, they started springing their plot. And this plot consisted of basically surrounding him in the Senate, Julius Caesar, and stabbing him to death with daggers. But they had to separate Mark Antony from Julius Caesar. So what they did is they distracted Antony before he even got into the theater. It was at Pompey's Theater in Rome, an ironic location, as you guys can probably imagine. But the Senate met there, and Caesar went in. Mark Antony was distracted outside, and the conspirators, not everybody in the Senate in there was part of the conspiracy, but the ones that were, they had their daggers hidden beneath their robes or togas, so to speak. And how it started, it's really interesting here. One of the conspirators, he was a senator, and he started with pleading that one of his exiled brothers be allowed to come back home. And this, as they expected, was denied. Caesar refused. And this was a symbolic thing, just showing, hey, look, this guy is a tyrant. He's a tyrant. He won't let somebody come back. So the pleading senator then grabbed Caesar's robes, and that was a signal that alerted all the others in the plot that it was time to attack. So all the conspirators, they all jumped. And one of the first things that happened, Caesar got stabbed in the neck. It wasn't life-threatening or a mortal wound, but it made him snap back and fight his attacker. And then everybody else started jumping in, and this was a wild attack. I mean, they were flailing at each other, and there's even reports and accounts that some of the attackers and conspirators even stabbed each other accidentally. That's how sloppy the attack was. According to accounts, Brutus, the friend of Julius Caesar, was the last to stab Caesar. And though I don't believe it is actually historically accurate, there are representations of this by the likes of Shakespeare that his last words, Caesar's last words, were "Et tu, Brutus," which I believe translates to "even you, Brutus," or something along those lines. So he was, but I don't believe that actually happened. I was reading some other articles in preparation for the show, and they were saying that it's argued that that actually never took place. So, but for thematic and plays and things like that. Shakespeare, they wanted to increase the drama, so of course. But yeah, so Brutus was the last person to stab Caesar. I believe he stabbed him in the groin for some reason. And this assassination took place March 15th, 44 BC, which is approximately, 2,059 years ago today. 2,059 years ago. Julius Caesar died at the foot of the statue of Pompey the Great. And now, this is the Ides of March story. This is the history behind the assassination of Julius Caesar. It's one that I find very interesting. It's really a story of the people just being manipulated and turned and basically going against their own political power and allowing somebody else to just take it. Now, there's more to this, and we're going to get to the aftermath of what happened with this in a second, but let's make some parallels to today. One thing that I am concerned about is the amount of hero worshiping that people try to do nowadays. Everybody, and even me, I have done this myself. For the longest time, I had these political heroes, people that I thought I looked up to, and the more I learn about them, the less I like. The more I realize that all of my heroes typically are just a bunch of chumps, and even those that aren't chumps, I find out that they're heroes. Or I'm sorry, there you go. Okay. I find out that they're human, not heroes. There we go. So I find out that they're just normal people. They have their frailties. They have their problems. They have issues. Everybody is human. So I think it's important for us not to create this sense of hero worshiping at any point. Even people that we agree with, it's important to come at it with a critical eye and never just assume just because somebody's popular or that we like them that they can't do wrong. This is what I see within the community now, within like the Democratic Party, for example. We got a hero worshiping community of Barack Obama. People are just loving him in this liberal community. It's not liberal, but in this community. But number one, they don't know anything about him. They just know, he's the first black president. He's a Democrat. I like it. Awesome. All right, he's my president. These are the things. They don't know his policies. They don't know where he stands. They say that they oppose things that Bush did. Yet these are things that Bush did, yes, but it was continued by the Obama administration, and in a lot of cases even expanded upon, such as the surveillance state, the use of drones, warfare. It's unbelievable to me that this man actually got a Nobel Peace Prize essentially just for showing up to work. I mean, I show up to work. Hey, I'm here right now, guys. I'll take a Nobel Peace Prize, please. Please. I believe in the non-aggression principle. That should count for something. So anyway, moving on. This kind of idea, this kind of concept of hero worship, it does concern me. I do often worry about it sometimes, especially in terms with our military. Now, I believe it's important to support our troops. Don't get me wrong. We must support our troops. These are people that are fighting for our liberty. These are the people that are out there, tip of the spear. Those are the guys protecting us while we sleep. But at the same time, it's important that we look at everything with a critical eye. We always look at facts and base our decisions and our opinions not on popular opinion, but on facts, information, research, those kind of things. So this is just kind of a cautionary tale. I look at this whole story of Caesar as a cautionary tale against hero worship. Be careful of hero worship. You can really fall victim to it, and this is something that our founders were concerned about. That's why we have all these checks and balances. That's why our government was created the way it is, and there was even concern about even establishing the office of the presidency. Our founders were afraid of a man on a white horse. That's the metaphor that they came up with. And this man on the white horse, he would ride in on this white horse, and everyone would love him, and he would save the day. He would be the answer to all the problems. And everyone would just be willing to give up their power to this man. And that is what happened with Caesar. He was looked at as the man on the white horse. He was this man, this prototype of a man that they were concerned about. An ambitious man that came in with all the right sayings. He said everything that the crowd loved, and he won the crowd and essentially toppled the government that way. So this, I think, is a cautionary tale. And I think it's something that we can apply to today. It's very it's very important that we discuss. But it's not over. The story of Caesar is actually not over yet. We're going to get more into this in a moment. We're going to come back and talk about the aftermath of Caesar's assassination and how it did not go according to the conspirators' plan. So, anyway, we'll be right back. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely, without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services, from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Hey, MacPack, we're back. We are into the second hour of the broadcast, and I just want to say thank you for sticking with us. I've really had a good time. Today's my birthday, and it's really special to be able to share it with you guys. I'm 30 years old today. It's pretty crazy, very crazy. Sometimes I feel older, sometimes I don't. But I'm just, it's kind of weird right now because I'm in my 30s now. I'm officially in my 30s. My 20s are gone. 20s are gone. And it's really strange because I look at it and I wonder, you know, I'm sure so many people have this kind of philosophical moment when they turn 30. I don't know. I'm not afraid to be 30. I don't, I'm not upset. I'm not, I'm not one of those people that are sad to be 30. I'm happy. But I do wish that I would have accomplished more in my 20s. You know, my 20s are over. They're done. And it would have been cool to have, my degree already under my belt and things like that. I'm working on it now. But, I had a busy 20s. I did a lot. I wouldn't say I accomplished a lot, but I did a lot. I had a lot of experiences. I met a lot of really excellent people. I served my country. I met a lot of really awesome people. As I said, and you guys are part of it. You guys are part of my 20s. You guys are, this podcast, this experience, this is part of my 20s. It's really it's going to be a fond memory when I look back. I can guarantee you that. And I hope that we're still doing it, when I'm celebrating my 50th. This has been a one heck of a ride, guys. And I just want to first of all just thank you guys for joining me today. This has been fun for me. This is a really fun topic for me. I love history, and I love ancient Roman history. This is like one of my favorite things, one of my favorite topics ever. I love this stuff. And by the way, we got a message here from Consul at Order of Champion. He's telling us, excellent and accurate discussion. The classic show, how we can save our republic. You are helping all Americans. So I really appreciate it. I'm really honored that you think this is a good discussion and that I'm doing an accurate telling of the story. So thank you. I did try my best to do some research here and freshen up. I already knew quite a bit about this because, like I said, I've read books and watched so many documentaries, and I love the story of Caesar, and it is a cautionary tale. I almost look at it as a fable, but it's real. It actually happened. So let's carry on. Let's move forward here into what happened. What was the aftermath of the assassination of Caesar? What happened? Because he was a hero to the people. That people loved this guy. They loved him so much so that they gave him a dictatorship willingly. He didn't even have to use his military force to do that, other than the Civil War, obviously. But he from the people didn't uprise and fight against him. The people welcomed him. People loved him. And what happens? The conspirators, the assassins that killed Julius Caesar, they run out into the street and they start declaring that Caesar's dead and that Rome is liberated. And they expect to hear, people cheering. They expect to see people in the streets partying and celebrating that they're free again. This is what they expect. But that's not what they get. They misjudge the situation. The people are terrified, and they run to their homes and lock their doors. And they do not embrace the conspirators. So at this point, Rome is plunged into chaos. It starts what is essentially another civil war. There's tremendous public support for Caesar's heirs, and the person that comes to the forefront is Caesar's adopted son. His name is Octavian. He's a young boy at the time. I believe, if I'm remembering, he was in his teens. So he was early teens. He was not an older man. He was not really of age, but of that time he was of age. He was joined by Mark Antony, as we mentioned. This is Caesar's most famous and reliable general, most trusted general, and it really gave credit to Octavian. So there was basically a misinformation campaign or a propaganda campaign that was conducted to paint these assassins, these conspirators, as murderers. And the people, they bought into it. The people really bought into it. But this campaign was put on by Octavian and Mark Antony's side. They were trying to basically show that this was a usurpation of power. This attack was them trying to take the power, not that Caesar had the power. Caesar had already been proven that he could be trusted with the power because he didn't want to take the crown. So this is the kind of campaign that was presented to the people. The people bought into it hook, line, and sinker. They began to riot, and they actually burned down the houses of the assassins, of these conspirators. This plunged the country into another civil war. Octavian ultimately destroyed the enemies, and he learned from the mistake of Caesar. He did not pardon them. He killed them all, and he was left the undisputed ruler. And one thing he did next, and it was actually a pretty smart move, he started to essentially create a cult of worship of Caesar. There were altars that were created in Caesar's name. They actually formally declared Caesar as a god in the Roman culture. He was actually declared a god. And Caesar, he probably wouldn't have cared too much about that. From what I've heard in documentaries about him, he didn't too much care about what posterity thought about him. He didn't really care so much about what history would think about him. What he really cared about was immediate political gains. So what he would have been proud of is Octavian's use of this to basically turn himself into the son of the divine Julius Caesar. So this is an important thing because this is actually a huge political gain. If your father is a god, you're the son of a god. That gives you a lot of political clout, especially in this kind of community. So Octavian became Rome's first emperor in 27 BC, and I believe if this information is correct, and this could be wrong, but according to a documentary I was looking at, it has his reign was from 27 BC to 14 AD. Let's see. In the process of being crowned emperor, he was he actually changed his name to Caesar Augustus. So he was no longer Octavian, he was Caesar Augustus after he got crowned. And he actually became far, far more powerful than Caesar could have ever even imagined, was ever even trying to be. He was undisputed. He was the first citizen. That was the title he created for himself. Roughly translates to first citizen. I can't remember what it starts with a P. I can't remember what it starts with, but or like what the actual name of the position was. But and he was an emperor, so he was undisputed, and it's pretty. Things went dramatically worse after this assassination. This did not happen the way that these conspirators had imagined it would. They thought that the people would embrace him with open arms, but really what happened is it plunged them into another civil war, and they all were killed. And, that's just what happened. That's the history of it. So, like I said, I love the story. It's a cautionary tale. Every time my birthday rolls around, I am excited to talk about it. The Ides of March. Beware the Ides of March. And, here's an important thing. I love leadership philosophies. I love talking about military strategy and things like that. These are things that fascinate me. I have an interest in these kind of things. It's like chess, I have an interest in a thinking man's game, that trying to use my mind. And when you talk about leadership strategies and I always wanted to be, when I was in the military, I always wanted to be a good leader. It was important to me. And it's this really weird, abstract idea. What's a good leader? What is a good leader? And I could only look to those who, one, I was led by, and I could also look to history. And that's why these kind of stories are really important to me, because I shaped my leadership philosophy on that. I wanted to be the kind of leader that you knew when he was serious. Because I've had good leadership and I've had bad leadership. I've had leadership that would joke with me all the time and I could never tell when they were serious. And then, suddenly they got serious and I couldn't tell if they were serious. And then it was this awkward situation. They were too friendly at sometimes. And then I've had leadership that was, just jerks all the time, basically. And they were, just barking orders at you. They were unappreciative of the stuff that you were doing. And, there was no camaraderie there. But then I've also had leaders, and I was lucky enough to have a supervisor. I won't put his name out there, but he was my first supervisor, great guy. The guy taught me so much about what it means to be a leader and what it means to take care of your people. There was camaraderie. He would joke around, but you always knew when he was serious. You always knew, and you never questioned it. If he told you to go, mop the bathroom or something, clean the toilets, something like that. It's a no pun intended. It's a crappy job, If he told you to do a job that just plain stunk, you would do it knowing that he wasn't a hypocrite, because this is the kind of guy that would join you in the process. So, he wasn't the kind of guy that would make and delegate all the stuff that he doesn't want to do to his subordinates. He would join them. And that's the kind of guy that I wanted to be. So, I took all of these principles from history and from all these things. I wanted to have a leadership philosophy like that. And, being in the military, it helped me mold that kind of stuff. And obviously looking throughout history and things like that, it helps that as well. So, anyway, I know that was a personal story of mine. I don't know if you guys are interested in that kind of stuff. If you are, I'm happy to talk about it. But I won't bore you anymore with my life story here. But I just do a little self-reflection on my birthday here, guys. Anyway, I want to talk about some news that's coming up here. So there's a lot of articles I'm sitting on. As usual, we got a lot of stuff in the news. We're going to cut to the actual news segment portion of the show here. There's a lot of stuff on the agenda and some things that are just ridiculous. So we're going to cut to a commercial break. When we come back, we're going to get into the next segment of the show, the Mack Attack, and you guys aren't going to want to miss this next segment here. We'll be right back.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. But now your host, Mack Worley III.
All right, we're back. If you want to join today's conversation, you can do so in a lot of different ways. You can contact us on Facebook, facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow. Send us your message. We'll read your message live on the air. You can give us a call, 360-450-5625. Again, that's 360-450-5625. Our Mack Pack phone lines are open, so feel free to light them up. In addition to that, you can tweet us at OnTheMoveShow or email us at talk@onthemoveshow.com. We got a lot of stuff on the agenda, as I was saying. And by the way, if you're just joining the program earlier in the episode, if you want to catch up on the archive or something after we're done broadcasting, we were talking about the history of the Ides of March, the assassination of Julius Caesar, and the history of Rome, ancient Rome. I had a good time talking about it. So if you guys are interested, feel free to check that in. Also, I really want to hear from you guys. This is important to me. So if you are listening right now, I would love it if you would contact me in some way, one of the ways, and just let me know if you like this kind of show. Because if you like this kind of show, I'll do it more often. You know, I can pick stuff throughout history and talk about it. These are things that I really love, especially when we're talking about ancient history. It doesn't have to be just Rome either. Anything ancient. If it's old, if it's got dust on it, I love it. So if you guys want more of this stuff, please, I got to know. I need feedback. So message me. Let me know somehow. I don't care how it is. Just comment on a link that I posted or something. Just let me know. I need to know. So, and if you don't like it, please let me know too. If you hate this stuff, it's boring, and you want me to just stick to the news, let me know. Because I'm doing this for you guys. So I just need your feedback. Anyway. All right, so what I want to talk about here is some of the things in the news that have been bothering me, some of the things that I'm just outraged by in some cases, and others I'm just blown away that it's even happening at all. So we're going to do this in the next segment that we like to call the Mack Attack.
It's time for the Mack Attack!
All right, this is a segment where I give you my take on outrageous events in the news. And the first one that we have here, I find really disturbing. This one is it's really, I'm confused. I don't understand why this is an issue. I do not understand it. Okay, there was a decision about banning the American flag, and how it might be a glimpse of the future. All right, this is an article on news.yahoo.com. The article is dated March 8th, 2015, and written by Mark Sappenfield. The controversial decision by the UC Irving student body government to ban the American flag, as well as all other flags, speaks to broader generalization shifts and views of patriotism. The decision has since been overturned, but still it was passed. The student body actually voted to ban the United States flag. And, you know, so it's one of those topics where, you know, I've actually had a friend here. Let me tell you a little story that is not my story. It's not one of those things where it happened to me, but I'm saying it's my friend. But one of my friends I grew up with in the military, he's a Southern guy. He grew up, I believe it was in Texas, if I'm remembering correctly. Maybe not. But he's from the South, you know, and he was a nice guy. I mean, nicest guy I've met. He's so nice. But he was also unaware, and I'm going to use the term ignorant, but not in a negative way. He just was unaware. He did not have the information. He didn't have a racist bone in his body. He was just ignorant to the whole concept of racism, basically. So, you know, he would fly the Confederate flag, and some people would be upset by it, and he didn't even know that this was going on. And, you know, some people are, you know, proud to fly the Confederate flag, and I'm not disparaging the flag itself. In fact, I understand that the concept of sovereignty. I get it, and I don't believe that the Civil War was entirely fought just because of slavery. It was for me, it was, of course, because there was a contract deal that was made. That's what the Constitution was. And when you start outlawing slavery, you've gone against the contract that we've made an agreement on. So now the contract's null and void. The union can be dissolved. Essentially, the parties that disagree can go their separate ways. That's what I believe the Civil War was. All right, and obviously, yes, slavery played a factor in it. It was one of those decisions that the South wanted to be able to make on their own. But I digress. Let's go back to the story. So this guy, he's looking at this as a Southern pride flag. You know, that's what he looks at it. Southern pride. Heck yeah, Southern pride. So he's flying his flag, and apparently he got the idea of flying this flag because one of his coworkers in the military, in their locker, he's in the military, in the locker rooms where they have. One of his coworkers had a Puerto Rican flag, so he saw that flag and said, "Hey, we can fly our flags. This is a great idea. I can do the same thing, so I'll bring in my Confederate flag." And, you know, then the coworker saw it. Some other coworkers saw it, got offended, and then suddenly no one was allowed to fly flags in the locker room. They weren't allowed to have those. So this is kind of the same thing that's happened in that story. And anyway, it apparently has been overturned, but I just find it crazy that in our own country. Now, I understand if you want to ban flying other flags for some reason. If I'm not really a big fan of that idea, honestly, either. But I can understand it. I can understand why people would say, "Hey, you know what? We're in America. How about we only fly American flags?" I can get that. But I still think that shouldn't be the case. I mean, it's a freedom of expression. You should be able to fly whatever flag that you want. If you offend people, you know what? You don't have the right to not be offended. It's nowhere in there in the Constitution. But what you do have is a freedom of travel. You have a freedom to move. So if somebody is offending you in the space that you're currently occupying, you have the freedom and the liberty to move to another space where you're not offended anymore. That is the right that you do have. So this is what the article says here. Flags, now I'm trying to find out who this is right here. They're learning in History 101. Flags are flown in instances of colonialism and imperialism, and they serve as symbols of patriotism or weapons of nationalism, the statement explained. The original ban noted. So this must have been included in the ban. I find it interesting. You know, again, we have to be careful of nationalism. We have to be careful of hero worship. There are cautionary things behind it. Everything can go too far. You know, I love my country, but I distrust my government. I love my country, but I distrust my government. These are things that you need to have in the right proportion. You know, you can be an American patriot, but distrust your government. It's entirely possible. Now, I love liberty. I love the concepts of liberty. I love the concepts of the Constitution. Now, that doesn't mean that the Constitution couldn't be usurped, changed, amended by somebody and it totally be something different. I would still love the concepts that it represents, but I could stop loving that document because it stops becoming a tool of liberty and then it would become a tool of tyranny. So these are things, and again, since we're talking about amending the Constitution, just so you guys know, I believe that you can amend the Constitution. I believe that it's not a living document, though. I don't believe that. It is basically a set of rules. You can't change the rules of the game too much. What they could change, if they wanted to amend the Constitution, would be to amend everything, not including the Bill of Rights. If they wanted to restructure the organization of the government and they could get that passed and all that stuff passed the way it would have to be ratified, depending on the way that they decided to ratify it. But they would have to pass that stuff. They could do that. Now, I'm in favor of a Republican form of government as opposed to a pure democracy. That's my personal opinion. I don't know how you all feel. I would imagine if you're listening to the show, you probably are a fan of Republican values, like Jeffersonian republics. But the 1 through 10 can't be changed. And why is that? I've said it before. I'm probably beating a dead horse. And if you've heard me say this thousands of times, and I apologize, it's because I really mean this. These rights were endowed upon us either by our Creator or they are self-evident human rights that we all have, and they're innate, they're natural. That's why they're called natural rights. That's the reason why. It just makes sense. It feels right. When you don't have these, you can feel the tyranny. It doesn't feel right. So, yeah, amend the way that the government runs. That's fine, in my opinion. I think that we should stay towards a Republican form of government, but the Bill of Rights cannot be changed because they didn't give us those rights. Those rights were just enumerated in the Constitution. That's all they were. Those already existed. We just listed them out in numerical order. That's all that was. But anyway, I find it just crazy that people are banning flags, American flags being flown, just in the sake. This is a political correctness move. That's what this is. This is political correctness at its, I was going to say finest, but this is probably at its worst. I got another story here. I haven't actually read this, but the headline here, I'm going to go through it with you guys. Police chief, and by the way, this is truthandaction.org, and an article written by, oh man, I hate it when I can't find the people to credit. I want to credit you. Put your name on the article, guys. Come on. Anyway, so, this is an article titled Police Chief Fired After Signing Pledge to Uphold Constitution. Police Chief Shane Harger has been ordered to disband his entire police department due to his political affiliations. What are his political affiliations? Chief Harger attended the Constitutional Sheriff and Peace Officers Association, the CSPOA, in Las Vegas this week. What? Now, this is something that I have to point out. This is Sheriff Mack's organization. These are people that are pledging to uphold the Constitution. That's all they're doing. They're pledging to uphold the Constitution. CSPOA is an organization under which law enforcement officers gather to reaffirm their commitment to uphold and defend the Constitution. On his flight out to Vegas to the convention, Chief Harger was detained by TSA and a man who stated he was a federal agent who informed Harger that he was a person of interest. Harger was detained for 30 minutes before being released. Upon his return, January 28th, Harger was placed on administrative leave and ordered by Sandoval County, New Mexico Sheriff Douglas C. Wood to disband his entire police department. Being a constitutionalist is now grounds to get you fired from law enforcement. Obama has already purged an unprecedented 200 top commanders from our military. Now we are witnessing the start of purging our police force. Anyway, this is according to the article. From what I'm reading, it looks like this is kind of older. It has no date. I really wish that they would have provided a date and the person who wrote it and things like that. But it appears that this is slightly old news. Many of you may have already heard it, but it's still disturbing nonetheless. The fact that there's a police chief that went to a constitutional reaffirmation where they reaffirmed their commitment to uphold and defend the Constitution, and that can get you fired. Unbelievable. I don't know if this has anything to do with the Obama administration purging, the military. I mean, we've heard about that. But as I mentioned last episode, we hear about police all the time. And we always hear about the bad ones. We hear about, the people who are out there abusing their right, or abusing their power, the power that we gave to them, abusing the rights of individuals, searching people unlawfully, treating citizens like crap. We hear about all these things, but these are the kind of police officers that we need. The good ones that are going to these constitutional reaffirmation conventions. Jeez, we need these guys. We need more of these. And I cannot stress how important it is to really thank the officers who are out there doing good for the community. I have nothing but respect for oath-keeping constitutional peacekeepers. Nothing but respect. Those guys are putting their lives on the line. Those guys are out there keeping us safe. I respect it, just like I respect the military. I have no ill will for the military or police, even though they can be used as an enforcement arm of the government. They can be the jackbooted thugs kicking in your door. But what I'm counting on, what I'm hoping on, is that enough of them will have this kind of mindset where they will protect and defend the Constitution. This is something that is so important to me. The Constitution, for me, is an idea. It's also a contract, but I have loyalty to the idea, and the idea that it represents popular sovereignty, the people's will. The government can't run without the consent of the people. Those kind of concepts. Those are what when I pledge allegiance to this, and when I said that I would uphold and defend it, I didn't know much about the Constitution. Honestly, I didn't know a whole lot. So I'm taking an oath, like many service members did and do, to a document I don't really understand. And now that I do have a better understanding of it, I pledge to uphold the values that it represents, all of those. And the document itself can change because it's a piece of paper, but those values are what I hold dear. I pledge that I will uphold and defend these values. And I think we need to have people in our police departments that take this oath seriously, knowing what they're getting into. We need it. We cannot have this filled with just bad cops. Don't treat all cops like they're, and I hate using this word. And I hate it when I see other people using the word pig to describe police officers. Don't do that. All right? These people are members of your community. And most of them are good people. A lot of them join this kind of thing either because they just need a job or because they wanted to do something. They wanted to serve in some capacity. They wanted to do a job that was important and would make them feel good about themselves, like they've accomplished something. So, don't disparage police, but we have to hold the negative ones, the bad apples. We have to hold them accountable. We have to. We have to get them out of there, remove them immediately. But we also have to be grateful and thankful for the ones that are actually honoring and upholding the oath that they took to the Constitution. It's so important. So ridiculously important. But this is just one of those stories. We need to have good guys infiltrating these departments. We have to. Because if we don't have people on our side, people looking out for the people, watching out from enemies foreign and domestic, then we're going to be in some trouble. I see we have a caller here. I'm going to go ahead and add him on here. Hey, caller, first of all, what's your name and where are you calling from?
My name is Kelly Kincaid. I'm calling from Waterford, Michigan.
All right. So what's on your mind?
Oh, I just wanted to say how much I appreciated the history that he went into about Rome, because I've studied a lot about it myself. And I was just going to mention that they knew that their republic was failing, and they wrote, several of the personalities wrote on what to do for civilizations like us to keep it a republic.
Absolutely. And, if we don't learn from our history, we're doomed to repeat it, as it's, that's a mantra that is repeated. But it's true. I mean, the crazy thing is that things go in cycles. They really do. And if we watch human nature unfold, for a long enough time period, you'll see the cycles start to repeat. And I feel like we're in it. I feel like America is not an exact equivalency of Rome, but there are enough parallels to where it can be argued. Would you agree with that?
Oh yeah. Some of their ideals certainly were, but they came from a quite a bit different culture. But I particularly enjoy some of the writings of Cicero because he knew what was happening. He didn't take part in the assassination, but he knew about it, and Brutus, called out to Cicero to restore the Republic after the assassination. And his book on duties was telling what made it a republic, what's required for a republic, because he knew that their republic was failing. It was going to become an empire, but he knew that if a republic is going along with natural law, and it's inevitable that is what people are striving for. So he knew at some time there would be a resurgence of the republic, and America definitely is that way. John Adams, he was the first vice president and second president of America. He said that he didn't know of another personality in history other than Cicero that was so great of a patriot and a philosopher wrapped into one. So I sure appreciate programs like yours, making America more aware of some of these foundations, people who saw the mistakes that led to the failure of republics and consciously wrote on what we can do right now to preserve ours.
Yes, sir. No, I completely agree. And by the way, I really do appreciate your feedback. Thanks for giving us a call. I think it's so important that we actually take the time to learn the history, and especially things that a lot of people don't really get the idea that Rome has any kind of importance, Roman history has any kind of importance, or even Greek history has any importance on American history. A lot of people think that our history began in 1776 and that's all we need to worry about, but that's not the case. Would you agree with that?
Amen. Yeah, absolutely. And they don't realize how much the founders went back to all the examples in history of republics. And Rome was a very big one, and it influenced the structure of our Constitution tremendously, and the attitudes of people like George Washington stepping down from presidency because their councils, which would be sort of their chief executives, had very narrow terms, and they couldn't become a perpetual consul because of what they would be viewed as a king. And you mentioned something about the kings, how that was such a bad word for the Romans that Rex was a very popular name for a dog, and that means king in Latin.
Exactly.
So they were just appalled by an executive taking as much authority as the Obama administration is.
You can definitely make some parallels to today. That's, and everywhere you can make some kind of parallel. And the fact that the people were so willing to give up all of their power and their authority and just relinquish it over to one man, and the government essentially in a time of great chaos. And Caesar was that man on the white horse, and this is, our founders, they were concerned about the history repeating. That white man man on the white horse there, he was, it was really feared that the people would just repeat that history because it happened once, it can happen again, and that's why checks and balances were put in place, and it wasn't even... The important part about the establishment of our country, and I think it's so important to note, is the character of those that were there. Because without individuals like George Washington, the actual reluctant politician, I think he was one of the only ones that in existence that really Washington just wanted to be a farmer. That's all he wanted. He wanted to retire and be a farmer, and he was actually an excellent farmer. I've mentioned before in the past, he actually invented the mule. He mated a donkey and a horse together. It was a female horse and a male donkey, and I want you guys to imagine how a male donkey mates with a horse. How does that happen? He had to be one heck of a farmer to pull that off. I'm imagining some pulleys and rope and all sorts of stuff. So, but yeah, I mean,
you're right.
Yeah,
Right.
it's crazy. So with he was a reluctant politician. He didn't want this power. He wanted to just be left alone. But this was thrust upon him. And unlike Julius Caesar, he cared about posterity. George Washington, he was noted after he got out of politics and he was retired for good. He was noted as being concerned that he was going to do something at some point that was going to ruin his legacy. Everything that he did was for posterity.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's why I appreciate people that like your program, bringing out the history, because people that have gone before us were writing for us. They were writing for future generations, and they knew about human nature a lot more than our universities teach. In fact, they talked about how to persuade the population. They learned from Julius Caesar, and they knew what they brought in the good things that we can use, and the conservatives aren't using this kind of persuasion as far as taking the liberal arguments and reaching the heart of the people, using logic, ethos, and pathos, emotion, credibility, and logic. And the conservatives aren't doing that. So actually, we would be shocked if the conservative movement were in the majority right now, because they're not applying these things that have been written down that are effective. But it gives me hope, because we have the map right there. And I think as soon as, enough people move in that direction, we're working with the numbers and we're working with human nature. So victory is inevitable eventually. But right now, maybe it is just a matter of getting the history out there, educating people like you're doing.
Well, I think it's incredibly important that people not only just learn the history, but learn to think. I don't want anyone to just blindly believe anything I say. And in fact, I can be wrong. People correct me all the time on my facts. And that's one of the things I love about, our listeners out there is you guys will call me out on stuff, and I appreciate it. You make me better when you do that. So thank you. And, I love the idea of getting people to think, do your own research, formulate your own opinion. Don't listen to me. I'm nobody important. But learn the history, because the history has a lot behind it too. And I mean, to what you were saying, the conservatives right now, I think, are failing at using the people properly. But the Democrats, they've been doing this. They got this. This is their gig as far as using the people. And I want to read a quote here. This is from Alexis de Tocqueville on democracy. This is, at least it's attributed to actually, I apologize. This is not Alexis de Tocqueville. This is Tytler, I believe. It's Alexander Fraser Tytler. There we go. So he said that a democracy is always temporary in nature. It simply cannot exist as a permanent form of government, and democracy will continue to exist up until the time that the voters discover that they can vote themselves generous gifts from the public treasury. From that moment on, the majority will always vote for the candidates who promise the most benefits from the treasury, with the result that every democracy will finally collapse due to the loose fiscal policy, which is always followed by a dictatorship. Now, we saw that. This is what happened with the Roman Republic. It was being catered to by the people. And we see this now with we don't live in a democracy, we live in a republic, or as the left likes to call it. For some reason, and by the way, this bothers the crap out of me, for some reason the left cannot call our form of government a republic, even though that's what it is. They call it a constitutional or representative democracy. That's what they say. They can't. That is the definition of what a republic is, but they can't call it that. But anyway, they use money and handouts as a way to get political favor with the people, and they get the uninformed voters to vote for them because they want more free stuff. And, hey, I know this guy will give me free stuff, so let's keep voting for him. That is essentially the principle that we have here. But, hey, we're going to have to take off here. We got to cut to a commercial break. I really appreciate you calling in, man.
Have a good evening. Thank you.
All right, take care. Okay, so we'll be right back after this break, guys. We're going to have a quick commercial here, come back. I want to talk about some more stuff that's in the news. I got a couple other articles I want to get to really fast. And anyway, we'll be back in a minute. Don't go anywhere.
Oath Keepers is a nonpartisan association of current active duty military, reserve, guard, veterans, peace officers, and firefighters who will fulfill the oath we swore, with the support of like-minded citizens who take an oath to stand with us, to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Did you guys hear that it's easier to buy a gun than a fresh vegetable in some places in America? Did you hear that? I mean, there must be some really hard vegetables to buy. I mean, we're talking really difficult because you got to get a background check. Who wants to do all that work for a vegetable or a book? And of course, by the way, if you aren't familiar with this, I'm sourcing this here from our president, our imperial president, Barack Hussein Obama. He's telling us that, gun violence so out there, it's on another level than other countries, which, I mean, he fails to mention that crime is at an all-time low and that gun ownership is at an all-time high, and he's trying to feed propaganda down our throats with this mess, this lie he's trying to perpetuate, that it's easier to, in fact, get a gun in some communities than fresh fresh vegetables, and books, which, I mean, this, first of all, is wrong. It's inaccurate. I know some people may be trying to tackle, he's trying to tackle the conversation of food deserts. By the way, if you see that written out, it looks like food desserts, and it sounds awesome. It just sounds amazing. I had to write a paper on that when I was in school a little bit ago. And, there are some communities where it's difficult to get fresh fruit. That is true. It's difficult. However, I don't believe that's the conversation he's trying to tackle here. He's not trying to tackle food deserts. He's talking about gun violence and how we need to make it more difficult to get guns, and as he refers to it, clips, which are, in fact, his reference. He's referring to magazines is the proper terminology. But anyway, I'm going to play the clip of Obama saying this. I'm sorry to punish you guys. I know you don't, I like you guys. I don't want to have to put you through this, but don't take my word for it. Take his word for it. Let me go ahead and load the clip here to the right time, and there we go.
To reduce the easy availability of guns. And as long as you can go on to in some neighborhoods, and it is easier for you to buy a firearm than it is for you to buy a book. There are neighborhoods where it's easier for you to buy a handgun and clips than it is for you to buy a fresh vegetable. As long as that's the case, we're going to continue to see unnecessary violence.
Now, what is unnecessary violence? I mean, I would say that all violence is unnecessary. Am I right? Am I right, people? Unnecessary violence. But, again, he seems to think that saying things that are just blatantly lies. This is a lie. There's no way that you can go into any community that sells vegetables or books and buy a gun easier. There's no way. Unless you're talking about an underground, unregulated black market, which, how would gun laws have any effect on it? Because it is already underground, unregulated, and a black market. It's illegal. It's operating outside the bounds of the law. So if that's the case, the issue is not more gun laws, more gun restrictions. It's actual enforcement of the laws that we have on the books. That's the issue. That's the reason. Now, we're talking about, again, I've made this correlation before. This is a symptom of a problem. So why attack the symptom? All right, if I know that you have a gunshot wound to your chest, all right, and you're getting blood all over the place because you're bleeding out, all right, I'm not going to attack the symptom of the blood. I'm not just going to take a towel and clean it up off the ground. Okay, fix that. Got all the blood up. We're good to go. Oh, wait, you're bleeding more. Hold on. I'll just keep cleaning it down. I'm attacking the symptom. No, you attack the problem. You have a wound in your chest. You stop the bleeding. That's the problem. So what is the symptom here is violence, gun violence, crime. That's the symptom. What's the problem? Well, we're not enforcing our laws. And that's an issue with this administration. Priorities being all jacked up. That is a big deal of it. But additionally, we have a major problem, and that problem is our prison system, which I have said before. The real problem is the fact that a lot of gun violence and violence in general happens from repeat offenders. A lot of this is repeat offenders. Well, if you commit an act of violence and there's any chance of you repeating that ever again, you shouldn't be let out of jail. Harsher punishments for violence, I think, is the answer. But in addition, we also need softer punishments, or no punishments, in my opinion, for the war on drugs. Get the drug prisoners out. Why are they taking up space, wasting taxpayer money? It costs us hundreds of thousands of dollars to house an individual, one person who was picked up for drug charges. Why are we spending all this money to keep people who are non-violent felons in jail? It is astounding to me. Let's treat the problem, clear out our prison systems full of the people who aren't really a threat to society, anybody but themselves. Let's get those guys out of there, and then put the hardened criminals away. Lock them up and throw away the key. Let's stop giving them time off for good behavior or early releases. How about that? That's the real issue here. But again, we're not talking about that either. He's not talking about that. He's talking about it being easier to buy a gun. And it's just a lie. If you're talking about within the bounds of the law, there's no way you will ever have a harder time in a neighborhood that sells both guns and fruit and books. There's no way that you'll have an easier time buying a gun than fruit or books. There's no way. If they're all available to buy. Unless you're doing it in an underground market. Right now, you need to have a background check. You got to fill out paperwork. There's so much stuff that comes with it. You depend on where you live and who you are. You may have a you may have to a backlog is what they call it, I guess, or a waiting period. There we go. You may have to wait. And they did that because crime of passion. Oh, we can't have somebody having a crime of passion and having access to a gun. Well, who cares if they want to kill somebody, they'll come up with a way to kill somebody. You think you need a gun to kill somebody? No, people can use guns, bats, axes. It happens all the time. I report on them in our Weekly Defender segment all the time. It just outrages me to hear this kind of stuff. I mean, I can tell you guys. I can tell I'm getting flustered here. I'm getting angry because it's illogical. This is just lies. It's not true, not even a bit. But anyway, we have a clip here. I want to talk about a Hannity segment here that there was a protester on from Ferguson talking about the shooting of the 2 police officers. So I got the clip here. It's about 4 minutes. We're going to go ahead and play it. We've got about 6 minutes left in the show, and then we're going to wrap things up.
Who's protesting outside the Ferguson Police Department when those 2 officers were shot last night. Ivory Nett is with us. Ivory, there's a couple of, I've talked to a lot of people on the ground, including people that were there last night, and there's 2 different stories that have emerged. One is that the shot came from behind the crowd, which brings up the issue of whether or not a high-powered rifle with a scope was used, and others say, well, no, maybe it came from the crowd. What can you tell us?
I was basically right there at the crowd, so I can definitely say it did not come from the crowd. But this is what you have here. There's a situation that happened back in August when Mike Brown was killed, and that was the first action that happened. Then you have a reaction what happened, which was last night when the police officers got shot. I'm not saying it was right.
Ivory, no, you should be saying it's wrong.
Yeah, that's the first point to note here is that he didn't denounce this at all. He just says, I'm not saying it's right, but he doesn't denounce it.
Because, we now have the Department of Justice under Eric Holder. We now have the grand jury. We have eyewitnesses, many who happen to be black. They testified to the fact that, and the evidence showed, and the forensics showed, we have Mike Brown robbing a store, intimidating a clerk. We know he fought for a cop's gun. We know he charged at a police officer. So you're acting as though this is, well, to be expected after Mike Brown acted the way he acted. I think the story here is you shouldn't act that way and people shouldn't be shooting cops. I don't hear you saying that. Why not?
The thing is, you have no evidence that he charged anybody in the store.
We do. We have witnesses that testify.
Listen.
You listen.
Okay. There are also witnesses that testify Mike Brown had his hands up. So you look at the facts first. And the fact remains is there was an altercation on Canfield. The altercation happened between Darren Wilson and Mike Brown. Mike Brown, with the forensics show, there were bullets with the hands. I don't know how.
Hold on a second. He said there's bullets with the hands. So the forensics show that there's bullets with the hands. Okay.
I'm not a scientist, but
he says he's not a scientist. Well, I appreciate him letting us know that he's not a scientist because that's really important for this conversation. It's important to note that this guy is not a scientist. So don't believe that he has a scientific degree or some experience to back up his bullets with the hand statement. But anyway, we're going to talk more about this in a moment here, but I'm noticing that we've got a couple of minutes left in the broadcast with Haywire Gulch, and I just want to go ahead and wrap up on Haywire Gulch on the simulcast over there because we only got a 2-hour block over there. And next, just so you guys know over there, there is Patriot News coming up next at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. You can figure it out for Mountain Time and East Coast Time. I don't know what that is. But anyway, stay tuned for them. Enjoy that program. When we come back, we're going to play a little bit more of this Ferguson interview that Hannity had, and then I'm going to do an analysis on this and talk to you about it in the Overdrive Hour. We're going to do a real quick overdrive today. It's not going to be long at all. I'm just going to do this one topic, and then we're going to wrap things up. But anyway, for those of you over on Haywire Gulch, I sure do appreciate you guys tuning in today. You guys, I really do appreciate it a whole lot. So thanks again. And feel free to message us and all sorts of stuff for topics for next show. I'm happy to, talk about anything you guys want. So, anywho, we'll be right back after these messages. Don't go anywhere.
I do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, and that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, pledging my life, my fortune, and my sacred honor. So help me God. Join us at oathkeepers.org.
Support On The Move. Help us make this podcast bigger and better. You can do this by going to our store and purchasing one of our hundreds of products. All designs are original and made for patriots like you. Just go to cafepress.com/OnTheMoveShow. We appreciate your support. Hi, I'm Latasha Worley, and I work with candidates to creatively and effectively communicate their message to voters. I offer professional graphic design services from yard signs to flyers, from logos to vehicle magnets. Email me today at latashaworley@gmail.com. That's LATOSHA Worley@gmail.com for a quote on items for your campaign.
Broadcasting from deep within occupied territory on the far left coast. You're listening to On the Move with Mack Worley III. Stand up, speak out, and get on the move. And now your host, Mack Worley III.
Oh, this has been a fun birthday. I gotta say, this is the way I want to spend all of my birthdays right now. I'm enjoying this. Spending this time with you guys, kicking it with the Mack Pack. This is the way, this is the life. This is the way I want to spend my birthdays. So, I just want to say thank you guys for joining me first and foremost. Again, if you're just joining the program, you are now listening to the Overdrive Hour. This is where we chew the fat a little bit more and deep dive on the issues. We talk all things politics and things like that, and it gives us a little bit extra time to wrap things up because I always hate the rush of having to complete things in a 2-hour time limit. I like to have a little bit of leeway here. We can chat, we can go longer. If you guys have something that you want to say, if anything's on your mind, you can always join the conversation in these times. And those are the things that I really appreciate. I really love talking to you guys, hearing you guys. You guys are the tip of the spear, members of the Mack Pack. I'm so grateful to you guys. So, first of all, if you guys want to call, you have anything on your mind, please feel free. The number to the show is 360-450-5625, 360-450-5625, or you can email us at talk@OnTheMoveShow, message us on Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, or get us at Twitter, or on Twitter at OnTheMoveShow. So, please feel free to message us, call us, email us. One of those things. I'd love to hear from you guys. When we last left, we were talking about this Hannity protester. He was saying that he's not a scientist, but there were bullets with hands, and that's his forensic evidence that he uses for Mike Brown's innocence. But anyway, let's go ahead and continue on. We're going to backtrack and play a little bit of what we already played, just a few seconds, so you can hear it again. And here it is.
Get the facts first. And the fact remains is there was an altercation on Canfield. The altercation happened between Darren Wilson and Mike Brown. Mike Brown, with the forensics show, there were bullets with the hands. I don't know how. I'm not a scientist, but the facts remain. And but with the cops getting shot last night, that was not right. But that was not right for Mike Brown to be dead. 4 hours left, 4 hours on the ground. So there's an action and there's a reaction.
Let me ask you this. Let me read.
Okay, he says that because Mike Brown had bullets with the hands and he was left dead for 4 hours on the ground, every action has a reaction. So he was saying that, even though he's not saying it's a good thing, he's not saying that it's a bad thing either. These officers being murdered. These 2 officers being murdered.
To you, I'm sure you didn't read the 87-page report from Eric Holder's Justice Department, did you?
I haven't, but enlighten.
You haven't. Let me help you, and I'm going to read some of it for you and some of it for our audience, because this is what Eric Holder's Justice Department found out. Witness accounts suggesting that Brown was standing still with his hands raised in an unambiguous signal of surrender when Wilson shot Brown are inconsistent with the physical evidence, are otherwise not credible because of the internal inconsistencies, or are not credible because of inconsistencies with other credible evidence. In contrast, Officer Wilson's account of Brown's actions, if true, would establish that the shootings were not objectively unreasonable under the relevant constitutional standards governing an officer's use of deadly force. Multiple credible witnesses corroborate virtually every material aspect of Wilson's account and are consistent with the physical evidence.
Okay, so that is very important to say. So basically, let me boil that in a nutshell in case you may have glazed over in that process of reading that. It's kind of dry. It's kind of boring. But if you're wanting to hear what it actually meant, is that Darren Wilson's account of wrestling around in the car with Michael Wilson and him going for his gun and a shot or two being fired from within the vehicle, and then Michael Brown punching him in the face and causing some kind of damage to his face, and then trying to walk away and leave, Michael Brown trying to leave, and then Darren Wilson gets out of the vehicle and pursues, and he tells him to stop, and he's telling him to freeze and stuff like that. Then Michael Brown turns around and bum rushes. Again, this is over a 6 foot tall dude. I think he's 6'4", almost 300 pounds. Big guy, bum rushing the police officer, and he shoots. He shoots in fear that if Michael Brown got on top of him, took his gun, he could, which he already tried to go for once, he could kill him. And not to mention, that's a big guy. A big guy could kill you just from hitting you. So, that's the account of Darren Wilson. And according to the DOJ report, and this is so important that you need to understand, all right? I understand a lot of people are, it's just the government. Of course the police are going to find that they didn't do anything wrong. No. This isn't one of those internal investigation reports where cops are looking out for other cops. We investigated ourselves, and we've discovered that we have done nothing wrong. Kind of like when Eric Holder discovered that Eric Holder had done no wrongdoing. It's not one of those. It's Eric Holder is actually doing the investigation on this. Well, maybe there's a common thread. Maybe Eric Holder is just a bad investigator. Maybe that's it. Maybe when he investigated himself, he's just really bad at investigating. Maybe that's it. So maybe they shouldn't have brought Eric Holder in to begin with. But no, it was an outside unit being brought in to find something. Obama said, go get them. Go get them. Find something. Get them. And they did their own investigation. The DOJ, the Attorney General, was heading up this investigation. Now, this is a lot different than just a department trying to cover up its tracks. This was a manhunt. They were trying to find something to hang Darren Wilson for. And this is the DOJ's report basically telling Obama, sorry, I tried. This is Attorney General Eric Holder saying, hey, boss, I know you really wanted me to get this guy. I did everything I could. All of the witnesses, collaborate with the physical evidence, and it's all consistent. The stuff where he had his hands up and he was saying don't shoot, it's just not true. But this is the report. This is the report. If they could have got this guy, they would have got him. If they would have, Darren Wilson, if he would have done anything wrong, he would be in jail. He'd be behind bars, period. He would be behind bars. They would have made an example out of him. They would have hunted him down to the ends of the earth. This would have been great for the Obama administration, but yet, oops, we can't do anything. He kind of really didn't do anything. Whoopsie. Sorry, I guess we went after you for no reason and tried to make a big deal about hands up, don't shoot. But don't let that stop the protesters. No. There were bullets with the hands. He's not a scientist. Remember, I have to clear that up. He's not a scientist, so don't get confused. There are bullets with the hands, though. There's bullets with the hands. So just know the facts.
Let me translate that for you. So Eric Holder's Justice Department, after investigating it all these months, said the witnesses corroborated and the forensics corroborated and the evidence corroborated the officer's story, and you still believe otherwise. Why don't you believe Eric Holder's Justice Department?
Sir, it sounds like your head is a one-way street, so I'm going to take you to Canfield. I'm going to take you to the St. Louis community, how we feel about this. So
you don't care what the facts are. You don't care what the evidence says.
No. The fact remains is Mike Brown was laid down on that ground for 4 hours.
All right, hold on. He just said that Sean Hannity is a one-way street, but yet this is the second time you said that. What does that have anything to do with anything? It was laid there to preserve the evidence. So are people killing police officers because Mike Brown was laying there for 4 hours, or is it because he was shot when the left is trying to have us believe that it was hands up, don't shoot? He was shot, saying, oh, don't shoot me, got my hands up. No, that's not the fact. The fact is that he was charging a police officer. Witness testimony corroborates that, in addition to the physical evidence, the forensic evidence. And if the Obama administration could make an example of Darren Wilson, believe me, they would. Eric Holder had to turn and have his tail between his legs. Sorry, boss, I wasn't able to do it for you this time. This is the thing. This is a false narrative. This is a false narrative.
You're repeating yourself, but the evidence is that the witnesses said
because that was a fact. That was a fact. That was a fact,
let me go
sir.
through
So
this.
you have to listen to the fact.
All right, here's a fact. Did he rob a store? Did Michael Brown rob a store, sir? He did. Did he intimidate a clerk? He did. Did he fight a cop for his gun? He did. Did he charge an officer? According to the Justice Department, he did.
How do you know? How do you
because
know?
Because of witnesses and forensic evidence presented in the case that you obviously didn't read. And now 2 cops are shot, and you're trying to compare this.
We're on live TV right now, so present that to the world. Can you do that? Can you? Can you present that to the world?
He just did. He literally just presented it to the world. He presented it to you, and you ignored it. This is the whole problem with this ideology. First of all, I think people in the hands up, don't shoot, they're just looking for an outlet. They're just looking for something to be angry about, okay? And there's plenty of things to be angry about, believe me. There's plenty of things. But this isn't one of them. This is not one of them. And I know some people out there are going to disagree with me. Feel free to leave your comments and let me know how you feel, because I'd love to hear your opinion. We can have a rational, calm discussion about it. But the fact is that if the Eric Holder Justice Department could have made an example out of Darren Wilson, they would have. They would have. It's not the government covering up for their own guys. No, this was a manhunt. They wanted to make an example of him, and they couldn't. They couldn't. And if this protester doesn't want to admit the facts, he keeps saying, well, the fact is, but you're ignoring all the facts. And the fact is, you haven't read the report. You haven't read the report that actually has all the facts. So how can you say anything about facts? And he's talking about how we're one-way street. He's claiming that Hannity is on a one-way mindset. All you're doing is talking about this one thing. Well, what is the one thing? It's the facts. What is the one thing he's talking about? Emotion. We should all be ginned up because a person who was involved in a strong-arm robbery minutes before was shot and killed in the street after trying to take a cop's gun and then turning and trying to bum rush him. Should we feel bad about that? No, we should preserve the evidence the best way we can. If that requires Mike Brown's dead body to unfortunately be out in the street for 4 hours, okay, but does that warrant 2 police officers to be shot and killed? No, it does not. That does not warrant that. In addition to it, anyone who does not come out against this kind of shooting is for it. If you are not against it, you are for it. You condone it. I am 100% against the killing of police officers. This is absolutely wrong, immoral, abhorrent. I would never call for that. I would never call for the killing of anyone. That is wrong. Violence is not the answer. Let's all hold hands and sing Kumbaya, why don't we, right? No, but let's not hurt others. That's a bad idea. If you're rooting for somebody to hurt others, you are on the wrong side. You're on the wrong side. You are on the side of hate. Stand up against this kind of stuff, people, please. I'm going to leave you guys with a thought here. And it's one of my favorite quotes. Let me actually see if I can bring it up here and give it to you guys. The exact quote here for it, because it's that good. 1 second here. To be silent. Okay, there we go. Let me see here. bringing it up. Sorry, guys. I'm live radio. I just kind of popped in my head here. Okay, so this is from Dietrich Bonhoeffer, and I want to tell you guys the story of Dietrich Bonhoeffer real quick before we go. And I've talked to you guys about this before, but he was a pacifist. All right, he didn't believe in violence, but he stood up against Hitler, and he actually participated in a plot to assassinate Hitler. And when he was asked, why would you, as a well-known pacifist, why would you condone violence? Why would you pick up the sword, essentially, and fight? And what he said, I think it's something that we all need to think about right now. We as a country are in a struggle for our soul. And the words of Bonhoeffer, I believe, will be able to guide us. He said, "Silence in the face of evil is itself evil. God will not hold us guiltless. Not to speak is to speak. Not to act is to act." This is very important. To not condone the killing of anyone, a killing that cannot arguably be committed in self-defense, is evil. To not condone it is to be a part of it. We have to speak out against this kind of stuff, people. I understand it's easy. And in this community, even my listener base, I know there's an awesome spread of people. There's so many different people out there that are listening right now. There's so many people in this group, in this community, and this is why I love it so much, because we've got our conservatives, we got our libertarians, we got our people who just, are anti-authoritarian, and heck yeah, more power to you guys. People that just don't like authority. And that's great. I love the fact that our community is so diverse, but we have to be able to speak out against things that are just wrong. We have to speak out. I understand you may think that the police are your enemies. And even in the lefty community, let me talk to you guys. I get how you may think you're disenfranchised and how police are your enemies, but they're not. The police are not your enemies, nor are they your friends. What we need is more oath keepers in our police forces and our militaries. We need to hold those who are violating the law accountable. Darren Wilson, in this case, in this matter, all the evidence points to him not violating the law, not violating rights. All evidence points to the person at fault here is Michael Brown. And to not speak out against those who are killing police officers across the country, to not speak out against those who are inciting this kind of nonsense, this kind of awful retaliation for things that just didn't happen. It's a false narrative. We have to speak out against evil, because if we don't, we're complicit with it. Anyway, that's all we got for today, guys. Again, I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in. You guys are awesome, and it's been one heck of a birthday. I'm really happy you guys joined me. If you guys like today's show, I would really appreciate it if you would share it on your social media. That would mean a whole lot to me. I really do appreciate when you guys do that. Share it, talk with your family. And by the way, if you haven't done so far, I would really appreciate it if you go to Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow and follow us there. That would mean a lot to me, too. I really appreciate the Mack Pack out there. Thanks for tuning in week after week. You guys are amazing. I appreciate your continued support. And don't forget to tune in next week. We broadcast every Sunday at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And for those of you who are interested as well, we also simulcast on HaywireGulch.com. And, they got a bunch of amazing patriots over there as well. Anyway, don't forget to check us out at On The Move Show. Follow us, OnTheMoveShow.com. Follow us on Spreaker.com/OnTheMoveShow. Facebook.com/OnTheMoveShow, YouTube.com/OnTheMoveShow, and Twitter.com/OnTheMoveShow. And as always, know your rights, assert your rights, and get on the move.